Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. Look, these guys are located in historic Columbia Tusculum neighborhood on the east side of Cincinnati, and Streetside is really the perfect mix of just local neighborhood watering hole and a modern craft beer brewery. They have 24 beers on tap, and I promise you, you will not find a bad one amongst them. These guys were great when they had us out for the live show for the CONCACAF Champions Cup kickoff to start FC Cincinnati's season, and they do events all throughout the year. They do a pint night on Tuesday nights. They do Premier League mornings. Tons of really fun events there. But a special note to Postcast listeners, if you mention the Cincy Postcast at the bar when you're getting your beer, they will take $1 off of your beer, and you let them know that we sent you their way. You can find them at 4003 Eastern Avenue or in the fridge of wherever you're picking up your next beer. Again, a huge thank you to Streetside Brewery for sponsoring the Postcast. And on today's episode, we have such a full one for you. We just went through the entire offseason with no matches to talk about. We start off today with 2 matches to talk about. In part 1, we talk about MLS kicking off FC Cincinnati versus Toronto. It was a dull affair, but tons of lessons to be learned, what this team may be missing, what they need to get together to put this season into the success column. That is all happening in part 1. In part 2, it's a look back at the Champions League matchup against Cavalier and a look ahead to the midweek clash against Cavalier this week as well. And then over in part 3, we are answering listener questions from the Patreon. You put that all together, you got yourself a postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more are 2 gentlemen who also could barely hear each other at Streetside Brewery. I am joined by the Chief. I am joined by Grayson. Chief, be honest. Do we have more than 12 listeners? Is it time to drop the facade?
Maybe 14.
It's more than 12.
You could get me as high to 15, maybe. I don't know. It's always so difficult to know who's listening, who's not listening. But yes, I don't know if you guys had the same reaction, but when we showed up at Streetside, I was mentally prepared to be embarrassed at how few people showed up.
Yes.
And then when I walked in, I was embarrassed at how many people showed up because there was just this certain knowledge that whatever you're coming in here expecting, we are going to grossly underdeliver.
Grayson, would you like to tell the fine people how much we prepared for the Streetside Brewery live show walking into that building?
I got there at like 6:50. That was my prep.
That was good. Okay. Yeah. Being alive and in the building.
Yeah, we at least one point had gone out to Streetside ahead of time just to claim we were scoping the building out. It was
drink beers.
Drink beers. Yeah, no, we were just there to drink. That was show prep, I think, right?
Yeah, we knew vaguely what the venue looked like. That was important.
Yeah, how to get a beer quickly. We figured that out as well. You know, we confirmed they do have TVs, which, you know, having been to Streetside Brewery many times, I already knew that. But yeah,
double checking. Yeah,
we were double checking. They were still there. They plugged in, all that good stuff. I don't even know if we tried to tune them to Fox Sports 2 to see if they got the channel. I think we were just taking that on faith.
We figured that
they had it covered.
They
knew what
competent
they were
people.
Yeah.
Yes, very competent people at Streetside. Yeah, thank you so much to anybody and everybody who showed up. Yeah, quite a few of you did, which was pretty overwhelming, which is great for Street Side. Love showing support for our sponsors. That was great. Pat Brennan showing up. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you,
loved
Pat.
having Pat.
So nice.
Oh, the appearance by Opie was a highlight for me. And I got to say, I've been lucky enough to be around the Supporter Shield a few times. Chief, I know you've had more than your fair share of the Supporter Shield.
This is accurate.
That was one of the happier reactions I've seen to the Supporter Shield. A lot of people just popped up immediately. They wanted their photos with the Shield. I loved that. That was a lot of fun when that showed up.
That was awesome. The other part that I really enjoyed of the evening was I didn't know Pat Brennan had that level of showman in him, reading out the lineup as if he was doing the PA at TQL Stadium, letting the crowd yell out the last names as he did it. No disappointment in the room. Everybody top of the lungs, full voice on that one. That was a blast. That was a lot of fun. And Streetside Brewery is still our sponsor. It wasn't a one-off thing. Make sure that you're going there, buying a beer, let them know we sent you. They're good people. Their beer is really good. And who doesn't love saving $1 off when they go get a nice craft beer somewhere? So thank you very much to Streetside for hosting us. That was really, really awesome.
Like Chief, I thought there was not going to be a lot of people that showed up. I was literally texting friends of mine the night before, like, hey, I have a podcast, by the way, and we're doing a thing tomorrow night at Streetside. Nobody came. But that's okay. I thought originally one of the things that was nice about having a podcast is you never had to meet anybody. And I was big on that, but the folks that came out that I met were very, very nice and supportive and said, positive, flattering lies about how much they like listening to the show. So,
yeah, I think we can all agree on this. There was a very nice woman during the Q&A who asked a very intelligent question about the Flop Mob lineups. And I think we all had some regrets afterwards that we maybe felt like we were too dismissive of her. So if you are in fact a listener, we just want you to know that we liked the question, but we have all been just so sick of how bad FOTMOB is at lineups that the dismissiveness was not towards you. It was towards FOTMOB being weirdly bad at this. And that is where that energy was coming from. I wanted to make sure that was pointed in the right direction.
And I'll tell you this, she was right. That was not the lineup the team usually plays.
Yep.
What FOTMOB was showing, right? And she had a free match shirt, and you love to see it.
Ugh.
And I hope she bought the free match shirt with the post-Cincy discount code. But
I mean, she might have been right. They might have been better off playing that formation this weekend, for all we know.
That's a good point. Spice it up a little bit there. Gosh, well, we have quite a bit of soccer to get into because we are now in the thick of the season. We go so long with not that long. We go so long without matches, and suddenly we have 2 matches that we have to cover in one episode.
It'd be really funny. We spent the entire offseason talking about too much soccer. It would have been really funny to drop like the Dungeons and Dragons episode this week. Like or 2 movie reviews and just don't talk about any of the games that happened.
we may need to bank like a movie review episode after like a brutal loss, like a 4-0 loss. We're just like, hey, you know what? Here's our take on Tremors. Whatever it
Great
is.
movie. Honestly, Tremors, watching all of the sequels too, might have been more entertaining than watching this match back again. I don't know. Ooh.
Not too much. I do have extensive notes. I did take extensive notes about next goal wins in case we decided to talk about it. So.
Just in case it comes up. Yeah, there were a lot of questions about what other movies is Grayson self-censoring himself from, so that was good. Yeah, we are going to start off with the Toronto match. It is freshest in our minds. We are recording this Sunday night after the game. We will get to Cavalier and CONCACAF Champions League in part 2. So we'll dive into MLS action to start us off here. I will say, before we get to the game, Chief, how did it feel to be back in match mode? Pre-match ceremonies and traditions? How did it feel to be back?
It was really funny being back, doing the match routine, because the overwhelming thought I had in my mind was, number one, wow, it doesn't feel like it's been too long. It feels like we were just doing this yesterday.
Yep.
And also just this sort of, oh yeah, the last time we did this, it didn't end well. This was,
yeah,
there were like walking into TQL Stadium again was like returning to the scene of a horrific episode in your own life. Like the only thing I can compare it to was, I don't know, like a restaurant you got dumped at, or where a horrendous relationship ended, or, you know, going back to the site of where you had to do a music recital in grade school and it went horribly wrong.
A bad car wreck. Something like that.
So, you walk in and I recognize this place. I'm familiar with this place. I didn't like the way my last trip to this place went. But what was interesting about it was that, okay, it was a nice day today. It was warm out. Didn't feel like winter soccer. Score one to the Euro calendar hardos that this is actually not a unpleasant way to watch. I don't know that I was ready to be back, but it was nice that we had the Cavalier match on Thursday as sort of a nice soft opening to the 2024 season, to where it sort of eased us back into things, where this wasn't quite the return to trauma that it might otherwise have been if we hadn't had something else that was a positive FC experience sort of to kick us off.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it just feels so soon. And I know Mrs. Chief holds that sentiment because she's been complaining nonstop this week about how short the off season was. And you've got to be kidding me. We're back doing this all over again.
Yeah. My wife was right there with me. Grayson, I know you didn't get to take in the festivities, so allow me to tell you what some of the lauded stadium improvements that were added in the offseason. I don't know, Chief, you sit in some fairly fancy seats. I'm not even sure you got to see these, but on the main concourse bathrooms now, all of the men's room urinals now come with a little miniature TV screen right at eye level when you are using the urinal, and a dare I say, cute little shelf. It has a little like railing around it for what I assume is your beer to put up there. Now, the little TV screen right in front of your face, you're thinking, oh, this is great. We're never going to miss, a moment in the match when having to run to the restroom. As far as I can tell, they only showed advertisements. They do not show the match whatsoever. What they did add was, in most of the restrooms I went to, which was weirdly 3. So I think in all of them, they added extra speakers. The in-stadium PA was very loud. Tommy G was very loud in the restroom. But
and isn't that what everybody wants in the men's room? Just to hear the sweet sounds of Tommy G's voice serenading them.
That's all I want. I'm just wondering, Grace, on a scale of 1 to 10, how dystopian is it to have digital ad boards directly into your retina as you're trying to relieve yourself?
I guess it does kind of alleviate the fear that some people might have that folks next to them are like looking side to side because they're so, entranced by the ads.
Right.
They should only have ads for things that you can get in the stadium.
Ooh.
So there's nothing worse than seeing an ad for something and then thinking, oh, I can't get that right now. I'm so interested in this product, but I'm my focus is elsewhere. They should definitely ensure that they're only advertising products that you could get in stadium. Like, oh, I would love to get a Frisch's Big Boy right now. Can I get a Buskin cookie to go with that anywhere? Advertising board, please tell me more.
Yeah.
What if you did like some like Clockwork Orange type montage on the urinal screens? It would probably move the lines a little faster.
That's a good point.
If it was just showing highlights of the Columbus loss last year, it's like, I don't want to see this. I gotta, get the stream going faster. I gotta get the hell out of here right now.
I really like that.
It is kind of screwed up though, that like every other stadium I've been to, they've got TVs everywhere so you can keep watching the game while you're in line for the can. And TQL Stadium is just grossly indifferent. As best I can tell, the business model is, use at your own risk. You might miss something big, which then I think encourages people to wait till halftime and then congest the line at halftime. So I don't know.
I think it's a sign of a healthy society, frankly.
Ooh.
There's a sequence in the book Atlas Shrugged when the two characters take a drive out in like northern Wisconsin. And at one point, the character turns to his passenger in the car and he's horrified that they have not seen a billboard for hours. And, the lack of advertisements shows the sign of a decaying, diseased society where nobody is producing, right? Nobody is producing. Nobody is trying to sell because there's nothing worth making and nobody to sell to.
Damn.
And I think that as long as there are video advertisements on top of the urinals, we'll know that we're living in a productive utopia.
I like that. Right up until all of the ads are like Go Army ads, right? Like they're all just military recruitment and
well, it's all I assume it's all like DraftKings.
Yeah, right.
Well, it should be all DraftKings except for one urinal stall, randomly every 15 minutes should have one of those ads that you used to get in the Internet 1.0 for, male enhancement. Just to make people wonder, is like, wait, is there a camera built into this thing? Is it looking at me?
Right. How targeted are these ads? Wait a second.
What if it was just like a totally realistic looking train driving right at the screen? Just give people a little scare.
Yeah, like those TikTok jump scares where all of a sudden the baseball is coming right at you.
Yes.
No, I was just imagining what was the dude that used to do the ads for that company that got sued, that was supposed to make your member a little larger. Smiling Bob, was that the guy? What's the name of that? Enzite or something like that?
Enzite.
Where they got sued into oblivion for this guy. If that guy was just randomly showing up on one of the urinals out of nowhere after being sued for like 20 years prior.
Man, I haven't thought about that in forever.
Why did they go with like the man who laughs kind of look for Smiling Bob?
Bob's having every day is a great day for Bob. When
like Bob's like, how I got these scars? Natural male enhancement.
Oh no.
Come on, Bob. Why so serious? The urinal videos, total dud. Major thumbs down on that one.
Yeah, I'm just going to chalk this up to they haven't figured out how to play the big screen video into
or even worse, they need an individual Apple TV subscription for each video, and they found out it was going to bankrupt the team to try and show these games in the can.
Man,
I was going to say maybe like the distribution license doesn't include like certain spaces.
Right.
We regret to inform you that the men's room in the northeast corner of TQL Stadium is not officially a pub partner, so they aren't allowed to show the match.
Oh, man. Well, in one of the restrooms, they did add a urinal that was previously missing. There was like a weird gap. There's a slight bend in the wall there. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but it would cause chaos in that restroom because everybody would like walk to that spot thinking there was an open urinal and there was no toilet there. And now there is one.
That shows you we don't have a real sports culture in this country. If this was like a real sports culture like Wrigley Field,
Yes.
somebody would have made a makeshift urinal there.
Fact. Also, I think it's weird that everybody like waits at the edge of the restroom and then like charges to the one instead of just like making a mini queue behind.
No, you can't do that, because if you do that, then you inevitably get stuck behind the guy with a weak stream, and then everybody else is moving faster, and you pick the
Okay.
wrong line. I think where our original sin was in American sports culture, speaking of Wrigley Field, was abandoning the trough. The trough is such an elegant solution for getting the most number of people in and out of a men's room as quickly as possible. No individual dividers. You are limited only by your level of stage fright and your closeness with your fellow man. Just saying, bring the trough back.
It makes more sense in a soccer context, I will say, where the speed and the windows of opportunity are way more important there.
If I showed up at the First Financial Club and there was a trough, like, okay, maybe behind the Bailey.
Right. That's a Bailey feature. All right. You leave the troughs in the Bailey,
No,
thanks.
I'm assuming the trough in the First Financial Club would be very nice, gold-plated, nice fixtures.
Always full of ice. You know,
Yeah,
it'd be a classy
a little
trough.
fun there, yeah. What other improvements did you notice at TQL Stadium, Kevin? Did you try any of the new food there today?
The new like souvenir popcorn bucket was a nice addition. I don't remember that in years past. $11 unlimited refills on popcorn. I will say they are opening themselves up, and I don't want to say this out loud, at least they take this away from us, but you buy one of those, you celebrate a goal with a popcorn shower, you just go back downstairs and get your free popcorn. So it's sort of encouraging popcorn showers.
That's a great idea. Everyone in the Bailey buys a popcorn bucket to start the game out. Refill it at halftime.
Yeah.
Or for a match like today, just eat it.
Yeah, just enjoy the popcorn throughout the course of the match. That was the only food I tried. Chief, did you notice anything where you sat?
I am now a member of the bourgeoisie. I have transitioned to the First Financial Club.
We get one Patreon month.
Keep those Patreon.
No, actually, the aforementioned Mrs. Chief delivered an ultimatum that we needed to upgrade to seats because she was tired of standing, because she stands all day for work and she's not going to stand all day when it comes to sporting events. So we did have to find an area that does have a chair back. So we ended up in the First Financial Club. So I sampled a burger with some guacamole on it, but I've already had that before. That's, I partook in one of those when we went to our little dalliance during the U.S. Open Cup, and we sprung for First Financial Club seats. So I was restricted to the club area, unfortunately. I will at some point venture out among the masses and find out what is new at TQL Stadium this year. But it was not to be.
I won't.
It was not to be today.
Grayson will not brush his shoulders up against yours. It was a lively atmosphere.
I saw enough masses on Thursday.
Yeah, he's crowded out. All right, folks.
The social battery, it is drained at this point.
So as maybe this was just me, but as we turn the corner from Washington Park to march towards TQL Stadium, that's usually when my apps of choice load up the lineup, and we got a very different look this year, at least in this game, than the FC Cincinnati we got accustomed to in 2023. I'm going to run through the lineup here very quickly. Roman Celentano in goal. That one wasn't new. But then that back line from left to right, Ian Murphy, Miles Robinson, Kip Keller, with Luca Oriano way out on the left wingback position, Yuya Kubo as your right wingback, Pavel Buka, Obi Wobodo, and Lucho Acosta are your three-man midfield, with Sergio Santos and Corey Baird up top. I think I read this online. I'm not going to check the math here. 7 new starters in the lineup for FC Cincinnati in Major League Soccer, or at least in new positions. Chief, what was your first impression when you saw that lineup?
So I guess the place to start was that right around kickoff time, I think it was Carter from the team tweets out that Aaron Bupenza is on a pitch count today due to picking up some sort of a hamstring injury at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he hadn't traveled to Jamaica for the midweek game in CONCACAF owing to some issues specifically with his visa and where he is allowed to travel without having to go back for an embassy appointment at Gabon, which is probably not in his best interest for the time being until things maybe get sorted out or get a little more clear with his legal status there. So without Bupenza in the lineup, you have a striker pairing of Sergio Santos and Corey Baird. And so my first thought looking at this lineup was, man, does this ever put into perspective that they need to go shopping for a striker or some depth at the striker position? Because just, I swore to myself, we're not going to be negative this year. We're not going to be, overreacting to anything. And I'm not. For the most part, there are a lot of very good reasons why this match turned out the way it did that we'll talk about as we go along. But the first thought at looking at the lineup is Sergio Santos and Corey Baird is not going to get it done. And you need better depth at striker, specifically than Santos, who has, for the majority of his career with FC Cincinnati, looked incredibly disappointing and non-threatening. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me, that once you get by Aaron Bupenza, this team may have some difficulties when it comes to fielding an attacking lineup.
Grayson, thoughts on the lineup? Or your first impression? Where were your eyes drawn to first there?
Well, so I got in the car and turned on Sirius XM FC, and the game was about 20 minutes in. I was trying to figure out who was in the lineup based on whose names were called.
Ooh.
And I think I had 10 of them for a while. And I actually started to wonder if Bupenza had gotten a red card or something. Because I had not heard a striker's name called by Tommy G for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then when I found out it was Sergio Santos, it kind of made sense.
Yeah. That's a really funny way to try to work your way backwards as to what was actually happening in the game.
That's actually a really elegant way also to describe just how non-threatening the FC was for the majority of this game, that you could go stretches of 10 to 15 minutes and not have any idea who was playing striker for this team, just because there were no dangerous moments for this team by and large. And you probably missed one of the most dangerous moments, which was Corey Baird attempting a bicycle kick. And then I don't think he touched the ball for the remainder of the game after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
Looking at the rest of the lineup, it was good to see Luca Oriano. I'm amazed he was able to play, considering he was only signed on Friday. And we talk about how difficult it is for players to make the transition to MLS. I think that narrative is dead, because he signs on a Friday. He's available to play on a Sunday. I don't think anyone else has an excuse now for not being able to be ready, considering how quick of a turnaround that was, because in no way has he been here for weeks and weeks training under an assumed alias. So it was good to see Oriano out there. The other thing, Yuya Kubo gets the nod right out there at right wing back. They still list him as a midfielder when they do the official team lineups and the announcements. So I guess that kind of answers the question in a way that I think we all suspected, that Yuya Kubo, until they sign a right wing back, is going to be the first choice right wing back. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kip Keller, we knew we were going to get him, given the fact that Matt Miazga still coming back off suspension. So this was the Kip Keller game for at least the first go around. Otherwise, you like the lineup. This is a very close to, other than Bupenza and Miazga, this is very close to what I think is their first choice lineup right now.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of change from last year, but I think projecting ahead, given who's on the roster now, and that's a fairly big caveat here, this is pretty close to the first choice lineup. And exciting on one hand that this is the team that, you know, is pretty close there. And we knew Bupenza hurt. Miazga will get back in the next game, both in MLS and CONCACAF Champions League. So that's all great. That's all working in the direction we want it to. And that this is a team that is going to get the ability to gel. And it's a team that really needs the time together, and it really needs to work this out. I was excited to see Luka in the starting lineup. I know a lot of people were hesitant to say he would. And I understand some of that's hedging with, I guess, not being able to admit that he's been with the team. But the fact that he stepped in, and I will say was good. I think he showed a lot of what we saw with Barreal, maybe not as sharp as, you know, mid-season or postseason Barreal was down the stretch. He looked the part, and he looked dangerous at times, and he had some great interceptions. Grayson, you called it. He was a dribbly boy out there a few times. I don't know if that came through on the radio call or not, but he could dribble around some guys pretty easily.
So I think that maybe the best way to do our recaps this year. So we've got the lineup out here.
Yeah.
Takeaways, top line from the game before we start to break it down individually.
I think that's a good way to do this.
So my top line takeaway from this game was that we described this team as a work in progress in terms of the roster build.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching this team for the first time playing against actual MLS competition, and we'll talk in segment 2 a little bit about the Cavalier match, but I don't know that my reaction is different even based on watching the Cavalier match. And that's that this team is very, very much a work in progress on the field right now. And that's owing to a number of things. That this team hasn't played much together in terms of very key parts of the link up. If you think about this team last year, they were very heavily dependent on the interplay between Lucho Acosta and Alvaro. And I'm told I pronounce his name all the time, and I'm never going to change now at this point. But Alvaro Barreal, the link up between him and Lucho Acosta was so key to what this team wanted to do from an attacking point of view. That's gone. And it's Lucho trying to develop chemistry with a new partner on his left-hand side and a player that's never played the position on his right-hand side. And so much of what this team wants to do when it attacks goes through the wing backs, and that's 2 new people right there. And then when you add in on top of that, he doesn't have Brandon Vasquez in front of him any longer. There's an entirely new striker pairing ahead of him. And also one of the people that was one of their best looking players in the preseason, Bupenza, wasn't playing. There is just a lot of new moving parts on this team. And, you know, it's not a cause for panic, but it looked bad today. It did not look good. This did not look like a team that was ready to compete in MLS. But that's to be expected to a certain degree. This is only their second time out there, you know, facing live pitching. But the way this team played today against a team that is probably going to be abysmal this year was just not good.
Grayson, what's your takeaway from this match? What's your overall feel from this one?
Well, so as we've mentioned, I did not watch the game, but the thing is, like, I don't need to watch games because I see, like, in the penumbras, like I see, like, in the spaces between spaces. So I more look through games into the narratives, right? And so I don't need to actually see the game to understand the narrative, the takeaway.
I mean, in many cases, actually seeing the game pollutes the take and the integrity of the take. So this is good.
So I think the main takeaway is that, as we've said, it's early season, may be a little rough for FC Cincinnati this year, but what the needs are clear, and you're still seeing some good things from the new additions, and the center backs and center back depth is pretty much as advertised.
Yeah.
Right. And with the center back play that they can expect. And look, I know people were down on Kip Keller when they signed him. People like to point out that he didn't get a lot of time with Austin. And he looked bad at times with Austin. And our statement when they signed him was, one, cheap talent.
Yep.
And two, he's going to be playing in a back three system here. And he has a profile that is similar to other players who have succeeded in Pat Noonan's back three system, the way that he and Kenny Arena are coaching up the center backs. And by all accounts, it sounds like Kip Keller showed today that there is hope for him as a member of FC Cincinnati's center back rotation this season.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. For somebody who didn't watch the game, that is definitely one of my takeaways, is that this defense is as good as we thought it would be. But I do think...
Kevin, what's your top line takeaway before we get further into this?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going, which is, Chief, I think I disagree with you. I think I was actually more encouraged from this game than discouraged, partially because, yes, he's my meme, right? All right, he's my guy. But Kip Keller looked really, really good in this game. And if he is, in fact, our fifth center back, we're going to be really hard to score against. And even when the team did not have its best game, they kept a clean sheet. But I think about this. I think that this team, I'm not going to say that this is the worst the team will look all year. I don't think that's true. But I will say this is the least familiar the team will be with each other all year in MLS. That Buca and Acosta have not figured out their rhythm yet. Oriano and Wobodo and Acosta, they've not figured that out yet. And we did not get to see Bupenza and Baird develop chemistry together. And that's not even to say that we don't expect a right wing back to come in for Kubo and potentially another striker added to the striker room at some point in time. But this was the most, disjointed that we'll have these players be all year. And still, there were some really good moments. There were some opportunities. There were some flashes. And as long as Noonan and the coaching staff continue to do what we believe that they will do, and we believe that because we have seen that over the last couple of years, that they will continue to improve this team over time, I think that this team is very well positioned to gel together, move forward, and do very well. And I also say, just for a little added context, every single MLS team that participated in the CONCACAF Champions League before MLS season kicked off, not a single one of them got a victory this weekend. So in that context,
I think it's the teams that played midweek.
Yeah, the teams that played midweek, excuse me. So yeah, if you played, I guess, 3 weeks ago, you could have
I understand
won.
that. And I understand that. I understand the argument. I'm so sick of it. You're a professional. Do better. We play midweek games all the time. All the time we play midweek games. We play Wednesday games all the time. I get it was a Thursday game. You're pros. It's your first game of the year. Like, I hate this excuse with just a blinding passion. Every league, every pro league of note plays continental tournaments and continental cups. And somehow they all manage to win games occasionally, and none of these teams go into the tank just because they have to fly a little bit to go play a game. It's this uniquely MLS excuse, and the league just needs to get better. I hate this. Like, can you imagine this excuse playing anywhere else in the world? It's like, oh man, we had to go play in Champions League midweek and we're wiped. We have no chance against, Burnley or whoever the hell's at the bottom of the Premier League this year. Like this, they were playing the worst team in MLS. You got to do, these teams got to do a little better in these midweek games. I'm sorry. I read that number from MLS that none of these teams won. And that is such a sad commentary on the league that all these teams get wiped by one needing to travel one time.
So to that point, I think I'm not so interested in exploring the hotness of that take per se. Okay. But does it but I think that it's adjacent to something I thought I had listening to the game as Tommy G was talking about, potential substitutions and what was going on the bench. And feels like the depth on this team right now is really bad outside of maybe the center back position if everybody's available there, but today they weren't, right?
Right.
So like the outside, the wingback rotation was bringing in Powell for Oriana and moving Kubo to the left, and then bringing Halsey in very, very late for Kubo.
Yeah.
They started Santos at striker, and then Bupenza came in, and then the sub for Baird was Dotto, who I think had 7 minutes in MLS total.
Yeah.
Right.
Until today. Marco Mangulo wasn't even on the bench.
Which is interesting. I definitely want to talk about that. Which is
interesting. So then the midfield depth is Malik Pinto. And I like all of the players that I mentioned. They've all shown different things at various times. And I think, Pinto, Dotto, Halsey, these are promising young players.
Right.
Who, you could see them developing. But where was your impact sub in that group? Like, who is your proven talent coming in off the bench in that group, other than Bupenza, who I'm not really counting because he should have been starting,
right?
Except for his hamstring issue, but he would normally be starting.
Right.
And that was sort of I don't know if I cooked is the right word for it, but I put in the Discord, I think on the post, that you're in a 0-0 game at home and your move is to bring on Alvis Powell and Dotto Valenzuela. You're not going to win a game bringing those two guys off the bench. Powell is incredibly limited going forward. And I know everyone is high on what Valenzuela might become. Right now, he is a decidedly below average MLS player. And he does not, it's no shade. He's a very young player who needs minutes and he needs to develop. But as of right now, no one is looking over to Dotto Valenzuela coming off the bench and thinking, hell yeah, this guy's going to change a game. That's not on our side. And there's certainly no one on the other side that fears Dotto Valenzuela coming into the game. Sure, he's a nice kid. I'm sure he's got a nice future. But right now, he's not that guy. And I agree with Grayson's point. We talked about this last year, was that down the stretch in MLS Cup, this team had a decided lack of dynamic performers on the bench that could come in to change a match. And right now, one of those guys who you would have profiled to be that way is Yuya Kubo. He's a starter because we don't have a right wing back. Another guy who I think probably profiles that way potentially would be a Corey Baird, who you could bring in off the bench to be a striker. And he's a starter because they're apparently still shopping for a starting striker. So until this is more of what we talked about in the season preview and why work in progress mode, it isn't panic mode. It's that these players that we need to be game changers to go change a game late, they have to start right now because the roster build isn't complete right now. And I think that's an incredibly astute observation from Grayson right there, is that you see the substitution patterns and it's like, wow, they've got nothing they can go to in terms of changing this game. And even if I would say that even if Bupenza would have started, I mean, Santos played so thoroughly average that I don't think that you could even make the claim Santos would have been a game changer coming off the bench.
But if Santos is going to be effective, I think his biggest chance of being effective in MLS competition is as a second half sub.
Yes.
Running at tired defenders.
Yes.
And so you start him when I think he's at his least likely to be effective. and then you bring in like Bupenza cold in the middle of the game. And yeah, like you end up with Valenzuela coming in for Baird. And I would love nothing more than for Valenzuela to be the guy you look for, who's going to make a difference and provide, dangerous goal threat off the bench. And he needs to get minutes for sure. But as Chief said, this was a 0-0 game in league competition at home. All things being equal, this isn't a let's get the homegrown minutes game.
Right.
Right. This is a let's throw on Christian Ramirez.
Right.
To try to win.
Get the win. I will say, and it probably didn't come through on the radio, Dado's green boots were awesome. They're very bright. And I think he was very lively. I was getting a lot of Halsey last year vibes from Dado. Like he was not taking any shit and getting involved and showed flashes of chemistry with Lucho, which is exciting if that is something that can develop. So I will say I'm slightly bullish on Dado coming out of this game. But granted, yes, he's not a proven MLS commodity that is capable of taking over a game as a substitute. For sure.
He's also not even an unproven commodity. He's like a lottery ticket at this point in his career. And, flashes are great, but this was a match where you would have liked to have seen them pour something on at the end. They started to possess the ball a little bit more in the second half, and there was just nothing they could go to that was going to break this game down. There was nothing that they had to offer that was going to change the math on how this game was going. And look, work in progress, not a great sign for the early in the year.
What if you had like a U22 midfielder with like Copa Sudamerica finals experience and was a international for a South American national team?
Yeah.
To bring off the bench, right? Like that's the type of player you would love to have on the bench. And I am not at all second guessing the decision for Marco Angulo not being available. I guarantee there's a very good reason that he's available. The reason that he wasn't available. The point I'm making is like that's a spot that you would have liked to have available to you in today's game, and for whatever reason, I don't know if anybody's put that out there. I was driving for like 6 hours today.
That reason did not come up. I do think it's fair to speculate that the club is looking for a loan opportunity for him, and I would not be surprised to learn in the next couple of days that he was getting a medical somewhere or whatever the case may be.
I think Pat Brennan actually reported that they were looking for a loan for him. So,
which again would free up that spot. Midfield is certainly a position that a U22 role would be useful for. Striker would be useful there. I don't know what.
Well, if you sign a right wing back, Kubo can then become
your midfield
depth, and you can use the U22 on a striker.
Yeah.
I mean, Kubo's depth everywhere. So
yeah,
unless he's starting, in which case he's depth nowhere, which is part of the issue here.
Except for depth at left wing back, apparently.
Obviously. So there just wasn't a lot that happened in this game. I thought the defense was as advertised. I thought specifically that I agree with Kevin. I thought Kip Keller had just a hell of a game. I thought he was arguably the strongest of the defenders in terms of the performance I saw on the field. Miles Robinson is such a steady pro, and watching him play is kind of a joy just based on how his positioning is and how he moves to make sure that he's never caught out of position on anything. So I thought that was really, really good. The only real blemish, I think, on the back line is that there were two. The first one was right out of the chute, and I thought it was hilarious about, oh, boy, are we checking off all the boxes for narratives quickly. That I think, 3-4 minutes into the first half, there's a dive just outside the box, diving into the box, and we get our first big moment for replacement referees as there's a penalty called immediately against FC Cincinnati which would have been a deciding goal, it turns out, if they would have been given that.
Yeah.
And we get the first VAR check of the year, which somehow went our way. And I'm going to choose to believe that the reason why we won this is because none of these officials are PSRA members. And so they have not been getting all of the emails and all of the memos, and they haven't been on the group threads where it's been told, hey, you got to make sure you stick it to Cincinnati for all the shit they've done for us over the years, or the way they treated the Miazga situation. So I think the fact that there were non-union members working this game actually saved us in this moment, because the VAR check and they pulled the foul back to outside the box and it was dealt with. But other than that, I struggle to remember a single time in the first half that the back line was seriously threatened.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There were some moments. There was a hilarious moment later in the game where
second half where with the
yes,
what was it?
Yes.
Somebody fell down and then a shot that should have been.
I think it was Owusu.
Yeah,
could have been
their new signing up top. Yeah,
like a surefire tap-in goal that he just fell down and the ball hit him on the hand, causing a handball.
Just bounced around as he's sitting there on all fours. The ball just sort of bounces around in there. No, you bring up a great point with the center referee. The VAR call took a little bit of time, but they ultimately got it right, which again, if we're going to have it, take the time you need to make sure you get the call right. But I thought this was one of the better ref matches that we've had. The ref kept the game under control. There were, there's some moments, obviously you're always going to complain about the referee, but it was nice. The ref didn't seem to make it about themselves. I didn't leave that game knowing their name. Although I do think their name was Wiener, and I remember that because their name was Wiener. But
it's just the sort of thing about a person you don't forget, honestly.
Yeah, it comes up.
So Pat, in his post-game press conference, Pat Noonan said the referee was excellent.
There you go.
And I trust Noonan's ability to rate an official's performance better than my own or basically anybody else.
Do we know if he made that statement unprompted or if that was a result of a question? Because if it was an unprompted statement, that's an all-time moment by Pat Noonan.
Somebody asked him how he thought the officials were. I think it was a local TV person, like WCPO or something, which is maybe the first time I heard that. I heard somebody from one of the local TV stations in one of these press conferences, which that's a good sign.
That's a very good sign.
Continues. And obviously, I don't have any ability to rate the official. The only thing I would say, I want to say two things about the replacement officials.
Please.
One is there seemed to be a segment of MLS media that is falling all over themselves, micromanaging every decision, every VAR call, saying this VAR call took too long. This was a soft yellow, trying to point out. Okay, I want to say three things about this.
Keep going.
Trying to point out every little error and and I don't think that, and these are the same people that will tell us, you can't just complain about every ref call when it's the PSRA officials calling the game, and to then turn around and blow everything out of proportion as if we haven't seen a VAR overturn from a PSRA official or a soft yellow from a PSRA official is wild to me. Two is The Athletic, I think clearly is The Athletic seems to be the ones the PSRA is talking to. And The Athletic was actually subject to a New York Times union grievance that the sports desk work was being sent to the non-union The Athletic. So The Athletic writers are replacement workers or scabs themselves. They are being used by the New York Times Company to do what was previously bargaining unit work in a non-union workers. I just think that's very interesting.
I was just going to add to that. This past weekend, I believe, was the first instance of The Athletic soccer appearing in the print New York Times. I don't know if that had happened before. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, folks, look up on Google, New York Times grievance, The Athletic. You'll find plenty of articles and coverage of that dispute. And then the last thing is, I'm seeing a lot of people virtue signaling, like, you know, we support labor, we stand with the PSRA refs. And I got to say, I did not remember that so many people voted for Bernie Sanders. And, you know, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you as part of the movement, you know, back when we were doing it. But, you know, I'm glad you're here now, I guess.
Just to balance this conversation out, I'm going to be the one that says I really, really hope MLS takes a page out of the Gippers playbook and just fires all of the officials and decertifies the union. Like, we're going to break these bad boys right now.
So the problem,
I know there is so much legally wrong with what I just said, and I'm just acknowledging that right out of the chute. I just want to say this because it makes me feel good in this space.
And, you know, people are like, you know, hashtag pay the refs. The refs got paid.
Yeah.
Center refs were making six figures. They're making like multiples of what teachers and paramedics and all types of other, you know, people who, you know, don't bother me every day we're making, who serve, you know, like important functions in society. So like they were getting paid. You can talk about like, okay, what's fair or whatever, but if you're not willing to have the discussion of like, okay, should every MLS team pay an extra $100,000 this year toward ref pay? Should every accountant who has a side gig as an official make an upper middle class living from his side gig? Right. Does like center officials made more than Ian Murphy and like Duncan McGuire and all kinds of like productive MLS players that like we want to see on the field? And I know that refs got to be there, but like I don't think the arguments that are being put forward by, you know, middle-aged people with professional jobs who just by their haircuts have not been like that involved in the labor movement their entire lives. So, you know, I guess they're having more discussions this week. So, you know, hopefully whatever happens gets resolved.
I'm gonna bet they lost a lot of leverage this weekend just based on a cursory glance of how these games went, because I watched a few of these games because of the new Apple MLS schedule that now plays games at different times during the day. And I gotta tell you, I didn't notice a whole lot different between the last MLS games I remember watching last year and what this was. Was the officiating good? It's all right, but it's always been all right. It's never been a very excellently officiated league.
Yeah, Grayson, that's what I wanted to ask you. What would happen if MLS was just fine with these replacement refs? Is that an option? Like, are they paying more for these guys? Is that I don't know with
I don't think we're going to find out what these guys are making.
Okay.
I mean, maybe we will, but there's no way to know what they're making because there's no like union contract currently in place or anything. I think it's a little squishy.
Okay.
But my belief is that like, so I don't think there's like any, you know, sunset period for the lockout. You know, they don't have to bring back the bargaining unit workers until they reach some type of agreement to bring them back in. Even if it's not like the full CBA, they could reach a, you know, which MLS had offered the refs. So my understanding is the MLS had offered the refs the ability to keep reffing this year at what they made last year, with the potential that the new rates would be applied retroactively. So they would get, like true up payments for the games. And that wouldn't have been guaranteed, of course. It would have had to be agreed to.
Sure.
But you have the potential to then get paid your increased rate for the games you've already officiated.
Right. Okay.
But I think that since it's a lockout and not a strike, MLS can't just be like these. Or I guess not MLS, by the way. It's
right. Pro can't just decide a wholesale replacement.
I think in a lockout, the employer can basically only hire temporary replacements and not permanent replacements. Whereas like in a strike, you can hire permanent replacements, and those people become often. And those people often become part of the bargaining unit. And so like, it's not unheard of for there to be a strike, the employer to hire a bunch of replacement workers, strike's over, striking employees return back to work. Now the bargaining unit is a whole different set of people, and they file a decertification petition, and the replacement workers outnumber the formerly striking workers, and now there's no more union. So you do run into this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But with a lockout, I'm pretty sure you're limited in your ability to hire anybody as a permanent replacement. And if you read the article that I wrote, I think it's part 1 about the ref CBA.
Yeah.
There was a provision in there where it was like officials, non-union officials can officiate MLS games, but if you officiate like your 10th game, you automatically become part of the bargaining unit.
Yeah.
There's no contract in place right now. So like that provision is likely not, well, that provision is not like,
it doesn't exist.
Active.
Yeah. Like that contract is not valid.
There's no contract, so there's no terms to a contract.
Right.
Like there is circumstances where this is so fucking boring.
I'm enthralled. Maybe one other person is.
No, this is good shit.
So there's circumstances where people keep working while they're negotiating a contract, and like the certain kind of key main terms of the previous contract, usually like pay benefits, how shifts are assigned, that type of stuff, like stuff that's like kind of core to like the working, like the fact of you working will continue. But a lot of provisions won't. And there's often like a dispute about which provisions continue and which don't and whatever, but like they're locked out. So that kind of puts a lot of that stuff to bed.
Yeah.
But I do know because and I'll shut up after this, that the GM of Pro, I think Howard Webb.
Yes.
Put out a letter, kind of detailing, like responding to some of the PSRA president's claims and saying like what they had done. And they had offered, like I talked about with the pay, for example, they had offered a kind of interim deal to the PSRA to continue certain terms of the CBA and have them working MLS games while they negotiate. And the PSRA turned that down.
Yeah. You know who did not know you knew all of this before they stepped to you, at least digitally? Be Christina Uncle on Twitter. We don't have time to detail it now, but if folks go dig that up, Christina Uncle and Grayson went a few rounds digitally before
we ended it in a friendly manner.
It was
friendly
very
as
nice.
any exchange on the X app ends, where it's "have a good night, I'm going back to my life."
Right. It's just somebody did not know that they were about to engage in a conversation with one of the more knowledgeable people on the very specific subject that they were talking about. Chief, is there anything else from this game? It's hard to draw large conclusions. We did touch on the couple of big moments in this game.
Trying to think.
Celentano looked good. Sean Johnson looked good for Toronto.
I mean, he looked like he was thoroughly disinterested in playing soccer. It's always a bad sign when you get the crowd counting for you in the first half.
Yeah.
So he was doing his best to try and slow the game down a bit. I thought he looked good. I just thought the overall vibe of this game was there just so few chances that FC Cincinnati created. I pulled the old FOT mob stats up, which, Stats lie. We all know this. And it paints a good picture, I think, of just how kind of dull this game was. The XG on FC Cincinnati's side, 0.89 to 0.44 for Toronto, which I think is incredibly low given how good of a chance that was that ended up in Owusu's hand in the box. 17 shots to 8. Only 2 big chances for FC Cincinnati, no big chances for Toronto. And nobody with a match rating above like a 7.1 for FC Cincinnati. It was just I don't know. It was for a first match of the year, it felt lifeless and disjointed. And you could just tell that this team isn't where it needs to be yet in terms of a lot of players that we know are good players. Lucho Acosta just looked out of sorts for the majority of the game. There were passes played where I think he thought people were making different runs than they actually were. The buildup in the midfield just sort of never really happened, which led to neither team really having opportunities because they just kept pinging the ball back and forth to one another on misconnections and, bad passes. It's match one. And we knew it was going to look like this. And it was, you held out hope in the back of your mind, sort of after that Cavalier game, that maybe this team will hit the ground running. And then just, nope. So, I guess putting it all in sum, it was the parts of the team that are complete, the back line and the defending, looked phenomenal. The parts of this team that are sort of being remade as this team goes forward looked very much like they're being remade as this team goes looking forward. I guess the only real thing is that Baird had a bicycle kick that looked cool as hell and necessitated a great save from Johnson. And then after that, there was just not a lot of nothing on this game.
Yeah.
Nice day for soccer, though. Great day.
It was.
Great day to be outside.
It really was. Yeah, Toronto definitely seemed intent on killing this game off and was playing for a draw.
They came looking for a point, and they got their point.
Yeah.
And it had been a minute. I was trying to remember what the last 0-0 draw we saw at TQL Stadium was. It feels like it's been a really long time.
Gosh.
I think and I was trying to think what the last 0-0 draw FC Cincinnati had just in general in league play was. Like, I think it was Orlando in week 2 or 3 last year.
Did that?
Depends how you feel about penalties, right?
That's a good call.
No, actually, did none of our games that went to penalties last year were 0-0?
I don't think so.
No, they were all 1-1, right?
Except for the Miami one where there were famously a lot of goals.
SKC.
Somebody get the Minister of Information on this. I would like to know how long it has been since there has been a 0-0 game at TQL Stadium.
At TQL Stadium, it's going to take me further back than this, but Chief, you are correct. The last 0-0 game with FC Cincinnati was week 2 at Orlando. That was March 4th. That was the only 0-0 game involving FC Cincinnati. There was only one 0-0 game the year prior, 2022. That was Atlanta United hosting FC Cincinnati on April 16th. Wow, really? This is wild. Let me go one back.
I swear it felt like it's been a really long time since we've had a game like this at home.
August 18th, 2021. Of all teams, man, I would have missed this 100 times out of 100. CF Montreal.
Wow.
I remember that game. FC Cincinnati actually won that game 1-0.
Oh.
Brenner had a goal taken back for offside when he was not offside.
There you go. Alan Cruz got a yellow card in that game, if that means anything to you. Montreal played down a man from the 74th minute on in that one. Actually, yeah, gosh, that was a rough year. The week prior was 1-1 Orlando. Then it was 0-0 us and New York Red Bulls. And the week prior to that, DC United, FC Cincinnati, 0-0.
So good thing we don't have to endure games like this a lot because they're just They're just a slog to watch.
That was the last positive moments, by the way, of 2021. We went on to lose 3 games in a row, beat Toronto 2-0 September 11th, and then did not win a game again for the rest of the year. 2021.
Yeah, so here's I found a highlight of full-time Union officials calling Brenner offside when he was not, in fact, offside.
Brutal.
And taking that goal away.
Absolutely brutal.
It's a hell of a memory on that, though, to remember that specifically from that game. That's holding a grudge right there. I bet Brenner doesn't even remember that.
I got a tattoo for every goal of Brenner's that was wrongfully denied by a referee employed by the Professional Referee Organization. My back looks like Mr. Zaz from DC Comics.
I was going to say, you just...
Like full-on Killmonger.
I'm becoming the Red Dragon.
An intricate mural. Oh, God. Well, I think that's going to do it for Toronto, unless anybody else has anything else, though. All right, let's get out of here. Let's move on over to part 2, where we talk Cavalier and CONCACAF Champions League. This is going to be a split review preview episode, or at least portion. So we'll jump on over there. And before we get into the next part of the episode, I want to tell you about our other sponsor, Cincy Shirts. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that you've never heard of Cincy Shirts, I'm going to sit here and tell you I don't believe you, because these guys have been with FC Cincinnati from the very beginning. And we here at The Post, well, we are just huge fans of their work. They have tons of really cool FC Cincinnati gear, shirts, hoodies, hats, all sorts of cool stuff. Go over to their website, check out what they are selling. You want to go to cincyshirts.com. That is Cincy with a Y, or you can just click the link in the description of this episode. And when you go there, use the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, and they will knock 10% off your next order. They have MLS and MLSPA licensed FCC gear available online or in their 3 retail locations in Hyde Park, Fort Mitchell, or Loveland. And I can attest to this. I've used this before. If they don't have your size on the shelf, they can probably print you one on the spot in the store. So again, huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring the podcast, and a huge thank you to you, dear listener, for using that promo code. All right, and we are back. And we're talking Champions League, all right? Cavalier played FC Cincinnati last week on Thursday on FS2. I believe the home leg of this game is on Tubi for folks who are...
Or not Tubi.
Tubi or not Tubi. Tubi, sneaky good service, I will say. Free, ad-supported nonsense. It's everything Quibi wanted to be.
Quibi, Tubi.
Man.
It's all the same thing.
Ye olden days. So Cavalier FC Cincinnati ends with FC Cincinnati taking that one 2-0. The highlight of all highlights in this one was definitely Kimi Ordonez's back heel to Malik Pinto for a hell of a strike on the Jamaican side. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this will have been 2 matches ago. But Chief, any big feelings coming out of the initial Champions League matchup?
The Cavalier was terrible.
Not a good team.
It was. I think, weren't you the one that said they were the lowest ranked team in CONCACAF Champions League?
Yeah, they should be the worst team on paper in this whole competition.
And boy, did they live up to that. I mean, we were joking watching the first half that Roman Celentano was probably doing push-ups or running wind sprints along the back line just to keep himself, get a workout in, because he had nothing to do for the overwhelming majority of this match. The entirety of the match felt like it was played on Cavaliers' side of the field. They were unable to possess the ball for any long stretches. They were thoroughly outmatched in any duels that happened. FC Cincinnati showed an ability to get forward and threaten with basically minimal effort. And when you add in the environment it was played in on a high school looking field with generously 25 people hanging out there, I think most of which were related to Alvis Powell, maybe,
yes,
the looks of things.
And Malik Pinto. Malik Pinto also had family there.
Yes.
Yeah. But like, it felt like, this is what, so Kevin, when you talk about wanting more preseason matches televised, I think this is probably what you're thinking of right here. Empty stands, a broadcaster that's thoroughly disinterested in the game that he's calling from a remote location, and some local college side getting thoroughly beat down by an MLS team looking to get their work in.
Well, I don't know about you. I had fun on Thursday.
I had a blast. That was great.
I need more preseason games. Grayson, I'm going to read off some stats to you, and this is going to be our way of reviewing this game. FC Cincinnati had 75% of the possession. They had 27 shots to Cavaliers 5. They had 7 shots on target to Cavaliers 1. But this is my favorite stat of the night. Accurate passes. FC Cincinnati had 639 accurate passes. That's good for an 88% completion rate. Cavalier had 142 complete passes for a passing rate of 61%. This is like peak Barcelona playing an MLS side. This is what that ratio that is telling me there. The only statistical category on FOTMob that Cavalier won. I love this. They beat us by 2 on throw-ins. They had 22 throw-ins to our 20. Any hesitation going into this midweek game that FC Cincinnati can't advance in CONCACAF Champions League?
No hesitation. I'm looking forward to a fun time for my first game in person of the season. You forgot the probably most important stat from that game Thursday, though. Brett Halsey pushed a guy.
It's an incredible bit of video. Just that's going to live on in the reaction GIF lore, I think.
Yeah, that was
for sure
such a good moment. I'm excited to just have this team gel more. I mean, from the midweek game to the game on the weekend, it was virtually the same starting lineup. Miazga for Keller on the back line, Oriano for Halsey on the left wing position, but otherwise that was the lineup. I'll be very interested to see what happens this weekend. I assume, and will continue to assume, that the lineup we get on Wednesday is going to be heavily rotated. I think we see Pinto start. I think we see Halsey start. I think we see Powell start.
I would have said that before today, but after watching today, I can't imagine that the takeaway from Noonan and the coaching staff is anything other than these guys need to play together more. And it's early in the year. There's not a lot of minutes on the tires right now for anyone that's playing. There will be time later on this year to rotate. But right now, with as thin as the bench is and as little time together as these guys have had, I would, and there's a reason I'm doing a podcast no one listens to as opposed to running a soccer team. But if it's me, my takeaway from this game today is any plans I would have had to rotate for the midweek game got thrown out, and you need to have Lucho out there with Buca, Oriano. If you can get Bopenza out there for some time without risking his injury, he might be the only person that stays on the bench, but I would want Baird out there, and I would want as much of the back line in there as possible for a game like this. You should be able to sub a lot of these guys out later in the match, especially if you score a goal or two early. But these guys need minutes together, and they need minutes together right out of the chute, not sort of coming on in shifts to play with one another.
Grayson, what would you do?
Yeah, I mostly agree with Chief. I think the people that he mentioned, I want to see out there on Wednesday because I want them to get some game time together where no offense to Cavalier, although you already said it, it's an inferior opponent. Let's work on our patterns of play. Let's work on getting in sync. Let's watch the ball hit the back of the net, a few times, right? I'm a big believer in the repetition of scoring goals, where like if you're scoring goals, it doesn't matter the level of competition. You kind of get into that rhythm.
It's like free throw shooting. Got to see the ball go through the net.
Right. But I would be surprised if they like rotated out like Miles Robinson and let Miazga play with Keller and Murphy, or rotated out, say, Kubo at right wing back and played like Alvis there to start. But like, I think anybody that you think is supposed to be like a key contributor in how you plan to score goals, should be out there to start the game Wednesday. And let's get it rolling.
And I include Kubo for that reason, just because he's a guy who just needs, if he is the plan at right wing back, and for all we know, they've got somebody that they're lining and fixing to sign, but here before the window closes in April. They've got time to do that. But if there is any thought whatsoever that we're going to have to roll to the summer window with Yuya Kubo being one of the first choices at right wing back, he needs minutes. He needs minutes there. It's a position that he's not familiar with, and he's being asked to do a different thing with players who are used to him doing something completely different, where he just needs to get in sync with that.
Yeah.
You had 75% possession down at their place. They're not gonna touch the ball.
Right.
Like a TQL, right? This is gonna be a prime opportunity to get everybody on the same page with each other.
I mean, Sergio Santos scored the opening goal.
Maybe the coaching staff sees it differently than I do, and I'm sure they see like many, many things differently than I do because they watch the games.
Who's to say?
I don't know. Kevin, you also were at the game today. Is the takeaway that they need more time, or is the takeaway is practice time going to fix this, or am I wrong in thinking that they need game time? Is this even game time useful because it's such a bad opponent? I don't know if that's the answer either.
That's where my thought was going, that it's almost junk minutes, that if we run out the first choice lineup on these guys and we beat them 12-0, I don't know how valuable that is. But it's not to say it would be of no value. You do just need to start to balance the winning this round, or even drawing this round or this game as you advance. You will have to play Monterrey. Those will be tough games. That's more midweek travel that other teams in the league don't have to do. You presumably want to catch a team like Chicago earlier in the season before their new pieces start to gel and come together. So this coming weekend's match is very important. I don't know how much of that is, you want to let guys hang back, make sure everybody's healthy, or that. I could really go either way. But my first instinct was that this team is so bad that the lessons learned would not be as useful. Or at least you wouldn't gain anything more than just doing FCC 2 versus FCC 1 all week in games.
I'm also not. Okay, so I understand Grayson found this to be a hot take in the first half of things, whatever. If MLS teams are going to be so bad in this tournament that it ruins the start of their year, if we're not going to win it, just lose and get out of this, because it's really not going to provide. If we're not in a position to win it, then all we're doing is making the games that are important miserable. I don't want to do another one of these 0-0 games. And if the price for that is dumping out after the second round or the first round of the CONCACAF Champions League, I'm kind of over this tournament already at this point.
I see the value. I will say for other leagues, one, it certainly is a problem. I will hold up my good old friend Everton here as an example of this. Many moons ago, Everton was pretty good. They finished 5th in the Premier League, made their way into the Champions League, had a little extra money in their pocket, brought in some good players, balancing. Actually, it was the Europa League. That's how dumb that was. Balancing Europa League and the Premier League at the same time stretched a not as good roster to its limits, and they struggled in both competitions, ultimately getting dumped out of the Europa League and really struggled in the Premier League to the point where they never made it back to their sort of assumed position of 7th. The 7th place was always Everton's spot. That was the memorial Everton spot. And they never made it back ever since their last, foray into continental competition. In a lot of ways, it broke the club attempting to do that. I don't think MLS clubs are deep enough to be able to balance all of these competitions at the same time. That's not to say I agree with MLS's overall take that they need to get rid of the Open Cup to alleviate roster congestion. I think the opposite lesson should be learned, and they should be spending more on the roster so that every MLS team has 2 guys that otherwise would be starters but are on the bench for their MLS side. I think that would help quite a bit. But yeah, when you compare it to the Manchester Cities of the world, where their 3rd choice lineup would probably win the league in literally every other league, yeah, things look a little different. But until then, I think we have to give MLS teams a little bit of credit. But yeah, Chief, there is a point to where, like, if we look ahead and we see Miami versus Nashville and it's us and Monterrey, and you think, we probably don't even make the semifinals. Then yeah, maybe we just score 5 own goals to start tomorrow off. We just call it a day.
5 own goals and then throw the first lineup out there, let them get their work in, and we can be done with this. Because I know we're supposed to pretend like anything's possible and we can win this tournament. We're not going to win this tournament. It's not. Maybe if this was at the end of the year or further on down, but when you combine all the new people we've got to, mesh in with the fact the roster isn't complete yet, it's not going to happen. And so there's got to be a way to gracefully bow out of this. And if that could happen before Brandon Vasquez comes back and scores a bunch of goals like he's been doing, maybe that would be a win here in this space.
It would be just hilarious to force Monterrey to go play Cavalier.
Maybe having more games, though, helps them mesh early in the season, like work out some of those growing pains. And, even if you don't think Cavalier is going to provide much benefit, playing like Monterrey and having to all get up to play a team like Monterrey might be a good thing, even if they lose that round.
Yeah. Or maybe you implement like some youth soccer rules where you are beating a team 10-0, where you say like headers only for goals or something, or volleys only.
Right. It's somebody trying to unlock a bunch of Xbox achievements where
yes.
I'm not actually trying to win the game. I have to score a specific way in a specific time.
Yeah. So you're not allowed to shoot unless it's off of your weak foot or something. Right. Like we get Bupenza some reps on both sides of his body, and we see where we get.
Why not?
I don't know how much more there is to talk about this other than to say victory here, or at least not giving up the 2 away goal advantage in the tie of 2-0. We'll see us advance to Monterrey. Do we want to just do predictions here? I don't have anything else to talk about with this one.
Unfortunately, they'll win 3-0, probably.
3-0.
I don't see them, after watching what I saw in their home stadium, I don't see this team scoring a goal.
They had like one good opportunity. That was about it. It got run down pretty quickly. I will repeat my scoreline that I attempted to predict at Street Side, and I will say 5-0. I think we lay the whooping on him. Grayson, you going to thread the needle and go 4-0?
I'll go 6.
Oh, I mean, why not?
Yeah, let's get wild with it.
This team should only be gelling more. Even if they do rotate, they should be by far the best team on the field. And yeah, you make them go away. Yeah, this ought to be a pretty devastating match for Old Cavalier.
Oh, boy.
Well, that's going to do it for part 2. Part 3, we've got some listener questions. Join us over there. We just got a couple more questions for you, and we'll get you out of here. All right, we are back, and we are answering, many might say, listener questions. These questions come from the Patreon. A huge thank you to all of the lovely, very attractive patrons who support us on Patreon. If you do, you get to ask a question to us each month, and we have some questions to get to.
And if you are looking to become a Patreon, you can pay for that Patreon subscription with just one visit to Streetside Brewery a month. You order 2 beers using tell them that the Postcast sent you. Take those $2 saved and become a Patreon. Why would you want to do that? I don't know. But if you're so inclined to, that's a great way to find your $2 it would take to be a Patreon. And also, have some great beer at the same time. Also,
people talk about for the price of like 1 cup of coffee a month or whatever. Right. We're not even asking you to forego a cup of coffee a month. We're just saying don't tip your barista one time.
Yeah, come on now.
Give their tip to us.
It's just on the ticket. I need you to write, sorry, already paid somebody else.
Show up. They have Premier League mornings at Streetside Brewery now. Have yourself 2 dark beers while watching the Premier League. Take those $2 saved. We're not asking you to forego anything. We are directing you to a place where you can save money and then, remit some of that back to us.
We're encouraging you to consume more.
Yes.
Because there is no, as I've said, there is no higher virtue in the freest society in the history of the world than your ability to consume.
We are here to make sure the American economy keeps moving, keeps chugging.
And the other thing, too, is you need to go back to Streetside at least once because we need to make them believe that this wasn't a one-time thing and that we do actually have people that that it wasn't just all our friends and family that we paid to show up. Although my dad did show up and I didn't know that, and it was very embarrassing.
I think I made it clear that none of my friends came.
Don't worry, my entire extended family showed up, so we were there to fill in the numbers there. All right, so we've got a number of really good questions. I really like these. This one is from Sarah Gorman. She asks, we have plenty of least favorite teams, but which team would you each pick if you had to pick a best friend team? And how would you weaponize that friendship to be toxic, aggressively come to their defense on Twitter, even more so than their own fans, not leave their fans alone if you see them pre-gaming? I really like this question. The opposite of a rival. Who are you picking as your obnoxious best friend club?
Ooh, this is good. Okay, so I want to make sure I understand the premise of this question. This is a club that I don't hate, but that I also have the ability to annoy the ever-living shit out of by my behavior.
I think we are, if they are aggrieved by a VAR call.
We're talking like female friendship, not toxic male friendship.
Yeah, we're rushing to their defense and annoying other people on their behalf.
We are validating and supporting each other.
Even listening to their problems without offering solutions. Yes.
I mean, the answer is going to be whoever San Diego's biggest rival becomes, obviously. I don't know who that's going to be, but whoever that is, that's definitely going to be my new best friend. Because
who will their biggest rival be?
I think they're going to have a problem because LA and LAFC are obviously rivals. Who else is in?
I guess you had to do a NorCal, SoCal thing with the Quakes, but that seems really forced.
Yeah, I don't know that I like that. I think right now I would say, I'll say Montreal. I like Montreal. Francophones, nice place to visit. was at their stadium, enjoyed some good poutine. They seem mostly inoffensive, especially since Wilfred Nancy isn't coaching there anymore. Nice place. I'm going to say, yeah, Montreal.
I like it.
And plus, when I rush to their defense, it's going to be in a language they don't speak. So that's kind of annoying, I think.
I like that. Grayson, who are you picking as a best friend club?
NYCFC.
Oh,
man. Quoting Ayn Rand, supporting a fascist club. This is good.
I think their field is good, and I believe that it's regulation FIFA dimension sides, and I also believe that it's symmetrical and flat.
I like this.
I think it's good to have a presence of the stature of City Football Group supporting Major League Soccer. And I like the fact that, they actually play soccer. They play football. They aspire to play with the ball, to be entertaining to watch. Unlike the Pretenders, New Jersey Harrison Red Bulls.
I like this. I like the idea of supporting our rival's rival, enemy of my enemy. I think for me, I'm going to go a slightly different route. I'm going to say my best friend club is Minnesota. You
just want to join the Red Loons is all you want to do.
I mean, I'm not opposed
to the only
Red Loons.
Openly communist supporters group in Major League Soccer.
I appreciate that they exist. I like that Minnesota and Cincinnati are both on sort of the extreme sides of what most people will still consider the Midwest. I really enjoy that. And I think Minnesota and Cincinnati share a lot in common. They're sort of overlooked cities despite being fairly large. I like that they also came up from the lower divisions, that the star on their crest is referencing a lower division title victory of theirs. And I think that their fans need some defending from their own ownership group, because their ownership group does not have a full-time manager in place. And I'm still not even sure if their general manager joined them yet or not. I think he's supposed to be joining full-time in the summer from an English club. So they could use some defending in-house as well. They need some help over there. So
I'm always going to be bummed that they aren't the St. Paul FC, that they should have zigged when everybody else zagged.
Their stadium is in St. Paul, so they really had the opportunity to. All right, so I've got two related questions. I'm gonna loop them in together here. Question from Drew says, "Will Matt Miazga be the same after his anger management classes, or is this the beginning of a changed man?" I will couple that with, who will be the bigger shithouser in 2024? This one's from Bart Sharkey. Bupenza or Miazga?
What if Matt Miazga has an Office Space thing? Where he's under hypnosis from a hypnotherapist, and the hypnotist dies before bringing him out, and then everything from that moment actually makes him be Zen.
I really hope that's the case. Yeah, he's totally hippie. He's just, everything's happy. He has a lot of Nick Hagland energy. It's everything's really happy.
He shows up and he's
him.
just wearing tie-dye, just laid back guy, pajama pants to work. He's just completely changed. The anger and the edge that he played with is all gone.
I watched Creed on a plane recently, and I'm just thinking about the line where they're getting ready for the big fight, and Rocky says he's the champ, you got to take the fight to him. Miazga is the champ shithouser. If anybody's going to take the belt, they got to really, really bring it.
So you're saying Bupenza needs to shithouse Miazga in order to take the title?
Yeah. Well, he needs to do something we haven't seen before. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, the back heel goal in an actual game would be pretty spectacular.
So to me, I judge shithousery in soccer and who would be the biggest person in this space by who do I envision grabbing their eye like they've just been gouged and falling down and rolling around on the ground when absolutely no contact has been made. I just don't see that as a Matt Miazga move. Like, Matt Miazga probably says really, really heinous stuff, like whispers that to you as he's, on top of you before a set piece. I'm sure he plays a little bit with an edge, but Bupenza is definitely a dude I could see trying to flop for a card a lot more than I would see from Miazga. Miazga has too much pride to go down. You're not strong enough. Your arms aren't long enough to box with God when it comes to Miazga. He's not going down for you easy.
I think I'd agree with that. That Miazga is he's the enforcer of the team. He's not a shithouser. Like, Mosquera was a shithouser.
Yeah, the real answer is Miazga is not a shithouser, and like Bupenza is, because Bupenza like would know what he's doing, right? Miazga just wants to pet the rabbits. Like, he has no idea. Like, he genuinely is doing heart hands to the Red Bulls crowd. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that was genuine love. And he didn't even like enter his head that somebody would interpret it any other way.
Right. No, when he tells you that your mom is hot and he wants to do something to her, it's because he genuinely looked her up and thinks that she's an attractive woman for her age.
He's just an earnest fella. And no, I assume he will not be a changed man. I think that goes without saying.
What if he was?
In order to change, you have to have the ability to like understand why what you did was wrong.
And nothing he did was wrong.
Right.
So what would he understand?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
There's nothing to grow from this moment. We got a great question from KP, who said, who would you want to have a transfer relationship with? And do we want to be the bigger fish or the smaller fish? Which I'm very fine with changing this to the bigger spoon or the smaller spoon going forward. But
didn't we put a ban on all talk of that utensil at the live show?
I think it's in reference to the season.
Contextual.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand where the line is this year.
Look, if we're banning cuddling talk on this podcast, I will quit right here, right now. All right.
That's what a great husband. What a great husband right here.
So
the idea being, do we want to be Chelsea or do we want to be, what was the club? Vitesse or Vitesse?
Yeah. Like, if we could get all of, like Arsenal's 2-team players, or let's be the little spoon here. More Yerson Mosquera is out on loan. That's the dream, isn't it? To every year get some teams, hey, this guy needs a little seasoning, but he's also a Premier League or a world-class talent. Yes, sign me up for that. Well, with one game sample size, I say being the big spoon to Velez feels like it'll pay dividends if they keep churning out guys like this.
Yeah, I'm with Chief.
I
just want our son back is what I really want.
A development program with Wolves, very specifically. That's what you want. I like that. I like those answers there. All right. I'll finish this up. The last one here for this episode. Porter Henson asks us, how does the front office staff, coaching staff, and ownership feel about the roster /salary /team structure changes or lack thereof that were approved by the Board of Governors for the 2024 season? This is essentially asking, is FCC one of the cheap franchises that's happy to see things stay relatively the same, or did FC Cincinnati sort of expect /hope that things would be getting better by now?
I think they probably would have liked to have seen some more changes than they saw.
I agree with that. I had a similar question posed, not completely similar, but sort of similar vein on the X app this weekend. I think people forget that Carl Linder's old man kind of was reviled at the end of his life for his stewardship of the Cincinnati Reds. And some of that has been, I think, forgotten in a lot of ways after Bob Castellini's dipshit son decided to go run his mouth a couple years ago with the whole "where are you going to go" thing. But as mad as people are at the Castellinis, or were at the Castellinis, they were 10 times as mad at old man Lindner for not investing in the team, not spending payroll, for basically squandering their time. They had players like Ken Griffey Jr., Adam Dunn, the team not winning, not going to the postseason. It's hard to see that as a kid, even as a plutocrat billionaire, and not think, I would like to do something about my family's legacy a little bit in this space. So I do think there's a strong motivation among for ownership to win. And they're part of the new guard of this league. They spent a lot of money on a stadium. They're trying to spend a lot of money developing the area around the stadium. They want soccer to succeed here long term. And I don't think that they're part of that cheap owners contingent that's kind of holding this league back. I just don't think it.
Yeah, actually very relevant to this conversation. And I think my phone just died, which is great because that's where I had the tweet loaded up. But allegedly, news coming out late this evening as we're recording, that following the conclusion of Miami LA Galaxy, Don Garber is going to travel to Miami with 12 other MLS owners to discuss potential changes to how MLS manages their roster rules. This in conjunction with Apple saying that MLS should be signing more players like Messi, which granted, not a lot like him, but I can take the point of sign more superstars, drive more interest. It does feel like MLS is starting to have regrets about not making those changes this past offseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got changes made this summer, that we had some mid-season additions to the designated player rule at a minimum. That is something that I don't think the Players Union needs to sign off on, at least not formally. It's hard for the league to add more, tons more rule changes without the union having a say. But designated players is one area they're able to do that. There may be some others. I don't know. Grayson would be able to correct me if I threw out a hypothetical that was wrong, like more U22 spots, or making U22 spots become U25 spots, or trying to play around with something like that.
This does touch on a little thing. I might, since Kevin is now our video king, I feel like I might have to. By the way, congratulations on the video. Go like and subscribe. Smash that like and subscribe button on the Post's YouTube channel, the Post Cincy YouTube. I might do a video on this week to try and compete with you. But
please,
did you get the sense, or did either one of you get the sense, that there is a little bit of an undercurrent in this league brewing of anger that the fact that the roster rules haven't changed? And it was expressed this week by the number of teams that for the first time, and as far as I can ever remember, putting out roster compliance packets and tweets on their website of outlining to fans exactly what the state of their roster is, how they are compliant, every player's option years they have available, what they've done in order in terms of their roster spend. I don't know. That felt a little cheeky and a little a shot directly across Miami's bow, specifically this year, for how they just announced, by the way, we're now roster compliant, with really no explanation as to how that took place.
Yeah, that was very suspicious with Miami. But then too, yeah, I think that is a statement being made by certain GMs. And I know we heard from The Athletic, or via The Athletic, that at least one GM thought that Miami was completely fucked on the cap space. And then they sold one player that everybody sort of knew was out, and all of a sudden they were perfectly fine. That's not how I would describe fucked. So I don't know. Maybe they got bad info, because not everybody is privy to each other's books, although I think they are supposed to be privy to each other's books. Maybe that's only after compliance day. But these owners, or at least this GM, really thought there was a very different picture in Miami than there was. And all of a sudden, yeah, we sort of get this pushback from other GMs. Very interesting.
And here's the tweet, by the way. It's following tonight's game in Los Angeles, MLS Commissioner Don Garber will be traveling to Miami to meet with 12 owners over 2 days to work out how they should be thinking about roster rules going forward.
Okay.
And that comes from Justin Ruderman, who
is a freelance journalist in LA, I believe.
Sure.
I don't know. Grayson, do you have an opinion on this one?
I do think that there's a little something different in the current landscape with Miami, because you had GMs talking to The Athletic last year, even saying that they don't see how Miami can be compliant. And then you had GMs talking to reporters recently talking about how Miami's not going to be compliant. And I feel like it's fairly... The situation probably... I feel like the situation would have to be like a bit tense for them to be commenting to the media like that.
Yeah. I also very much appreciate that MLS GMs are telling the Athletic writers that Miami is in no way, shape, or form compliant, and that they are upset professionally. Like, them voicing that opinion is in a lot of ways saying that the integrity of the competition that they are engaging in is being called into question. But at the same time, those Athletic writers will belittle readers and fans on Twitter for saying, hey, I don't think Miami is compliant. And they will go after you and say, well, of course they are. How dare you question this? MLS knows what they're doing. I just think that's very funny that you get to play both sides of the argument there from some in the Athletics writer room. Well, that's going to do it for questions. Man, good to be back. Good to be back to 2 days a week, I think. We are going to be sticking with this Monday and Thursday-ish schedules. I think on a normal week, we would have pushed today's episode back because of a Sunday game. But given the start of the season, it makes sense. And the early afternoon-ness of the game. But yeah, Mondays and Thursdays, you can expect episodes in your feed. Chief, get us out of here.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us, and thank you so much again.